On this episode of More Than Strength, we finish our interview with Courtney Olson. If you missed part 1 of the interview, go to morethanstrength.com and you can listen in on part 1, or you can go to YouTube or iTunes, type in More Than Strength, and you can find it there. It's about more than what you lift or how you look. It's about more than strength. Welcome to More Than Strength. I'm Dan Flanick, and today I'm joined by our co-host, Jeff Batiste, or Dr. Jeff Batiste. He's a chiropractor, so he gets that doctor title. And then we're also joined by our special guest is Donny Gallegos. Is that Italian? Is that?
It is Hispanic, it's not Italian. I am Italian, though.
Okay.
It's funny. I've been on a couple of podcasts, and every single time we always talk about my last name. That's funny. We actually pronounce it Gallegos. My grandpa was adopted he's Italian, and he was adopted into a Hispanic family, and so we kind of meshed the two together. So it's like the Italian way to say Gallegos.
Wait, how do you say it again? Gallegos?
We say Gallegos.
Gallegos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nailed it then. Do you ever get like Donny G? Because that's automatically what
Yeah.
I'm like Joey Bag of Donuts, Donny G.
Yeah. Donny G is actually that's a good one. I go with that one a lot, actually.
Okay, so we're joined by Donny G today.
Boom, there it is.
Brute force training. First, let's just get this out there right away. What is brute force training? For people who don't know what it is or are listening, what is brute force training?
Brute force training. So brute force is a sandbag company. So I guess the proper term for that is going to be unstable load. They call it USL training, unstable load training. And we create or we manufacture sandbags, and we use those for our training mechanism. It's super cool because it's super versatile. You can do all sorts of different movements all over the place. You can take it with you. I'm getting ready to head to Costa Rica in a few weeks. I'm going to empty my bag out here, fill it up when I get there. So it's just it's a completely foreign, object that's always moving. It's always changing on you. So it kind of adds that fresh aspect of training that we look for.
And you outfit both like gyms and I know the military. So the United States military, you outfit with sandbags, as well as like what other types of facilities or people do you outfit with your sandbags?
Yeah, we outfit pretty much everybody. We're really big, obviously, in the military side of things, which is kind of where you guys stumbled across us. CrossFit gyms. We're starting to kind of get into the team aspect. So we have a handful of teams across the country that have, completely outfitted their locker room with a stack of bags, and which is awesome, especially for the younger teams that don't have like a full training room. The sandbag kind of provides, an all-in-one package for that. So we're getting into the team side of things. We're getting into the police and fire side. And then, every once in a while we get kind of like like a YMCA or like kind of one of those big box gyms where somebody there really likes it and snags a few bags. So you can kind of find our bags in kind of random gyms across the country as well.
That's awesome. I didn't even realize the whole mobile aspect behind it, that you can just empty it up before you travel and then fill it back up once you get wherever you're going.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. Rolls up. You can actually, one of the trainers I was on this trip with last year, he ended up using it as his suitcase and his carry-on. So he just packed all the stuff in there, and then when he got there, he unloaded his bag and filled it up with sand, and we used it to go throw some sand around.
That's perfect. So I know we could probably sit here and talk about like the product and the company and everything else, but kind of like we were talking about before we started recording is, we as people learn through storytelling, and Jeff and I, we both want to get to the bottom of your story, just because we think that you've created something really simple, but really great. And I'm sure that, you didn't look back when you were 10 years old and know like, that's exactly what you were going to do. But we want to dive into your childhood, just to kind of gauge you as a person and just learn more about you. And the first question I want to ask is, what were you like as a child, both socially and at home? Like, what type of person would you describe yourself as now, looking back at your, 10-year-old self?
Totally. Yeah, that's a tough question. How would I look at myself? I mean, I was always active. My dad owned a video game store when I was a little kid, so I absolutely had the chance to, just sit inside all day long and just stare at a screen. And that was never really my style. So I was always out, whether I was riding, my BMX bike with my buddies or, playing basketball, hockey. We played a ton of hockey. I was constantly moving. And I kind of still do that. So, that was probably the best way to describe it, is that I never stopped moving. I always had to be doing something. I never really got in any trouble, necessarily having to sit still by any means, but it was always, can we go do something? Can we go do something? Can we go do something? I remember getting super bored with my parents when we would go on like family vacations, because my parents are very, we're on vacation, we want to sit, read a book on the beach. And I'm like, we got to do something. We need to surf. We need to go on a hike. We need to just like go explore, and just find that next thing, find what cool is out there. Like, what can we find? So yeah, that was probably me as a little kid, was just looking around, trying to find something to do, something to play with, something to break, that kind of thing.
So you mentioned that your dad owned a video game store.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I can relate to how that's exactly how I am too. Just can't sit still. Just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, at a young age, the idea of building your own business was put into your mind because your dad had a video game store? Or was that something that happened a little bit down the road?
He was always, running his own thing. So I think that was, I definitely think that was instilled into me pretty early. And I'm exactly on that path right now. And I hit him up once a week asking questions, what do you think about this? I'm doing this here, all that kind of stuff. It's always been, build something. What do you want to take over? What do you want to do? It took me a little while to realize that, growing up. I mean, like I said, it was instilled in me, but like I said, it took me a little while to figure out that was the direction that I could take something. I could find that one thing and just run with it and keep building and let it evolve naturally and kind of push it down a different path, and just find what it is that keeps you moving. Because that's, again, kind of the little kid in you. It's like, I don't want to stop.
At what point did that mentality develop? And maybe it was just across the whole span of your life, it slowly developed. But I read this book called The E-Myth by a guy named Michael Gerber.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Pretty much the first business book I think most people read. But he talks about getting bit by that entrepreneurial bug. Did you have an experience like that? Because you're talking about building something and finding what it is that you're passionate about at that point in time, and making something of it, and then finding that next thing and doing that again. Was that something that at a young age you just had? Like, were you going about, at 10, 12, 15 years old, were you, having that lemonade stand on that paper route, doing those types of things that you hear some entrepreneurs talk about, and then you hear other ones who, wake up, and this is kind of how I woke up one day and I'm like, man, this is my life. I can do whatever I want with it. And then that's what I chose to do. Was it one or the other for you?
Honestly, I would say it was very 50-50. I didn't have a paper route, but I was mowing lawns. We did the lemonade stand, but again, I didn't do that for all that long. Mowing the lawns was probably the biggest thing.
We did too.
So yeah, it's simple, right? And then you're outside too, which is the best. So we, then after college, I went and worked for a company called Hero Sports, and they're a company based out of Denver, and they came on tough times. I think I was working there for like 6 or 8 months, and I got laid off. So right out of college, I got laid off from my first job, and I was kind of like, all right, this blows. My dad called me up. He said, hey, I got something for you if you might be interested. And his company was very small at the time. It was him and like 3 or 4 other people, 2 of which, one was my mom and one was my sister. So there's really only one other person, and I think a receptionist. So super small, but he needed help with something. And it was some techie stuff, like database management. And I looked into it and I liked it. And at the time I had I had the police, fire, military brochures sitting on my coffee table. I had no idea what I was going to do after I got laid off. So when he called me up, he asked me to do that, and I went into that side of things. I kind of went into the corporate world. I worked for my dad for about 5 or 6 years. And then I kind of had that wake up moment that you were talking about, where it was, yeah, this is not for me. He runs a mortgage company in Colorado, very successful. They're growing like crazy, but it got to the point where, I got to keep moving. I can't go sit in the same office all day long, every single day for, 5 days a week. And I had an opportunity at the time to go coach CrossFit, which was, I had been doing kind of part-time, just when I had time, because I really enjoyed it. And when that moment came, and then I had to walk into my dad's office and tell him that, hey, I'm quitting. That was probably one of the most nerve-wracking moments of my entire life. But it worked out for the better, because I got, that entrepreneurial side. I got to go help a buddy start to build up his business, and really focus on something that, I really enjoy, which is working out and teaching people and helping people, learn how to move correctly, and all the amazing things that come with CrossFit and with working out on a regular basis, and just, again, everything that comes with that. But it was that, like you said, is that moment of, yeah, this is not my deal. I couldn't do the mortgage thing. I couldn't sit in the office. I had to find that next thing.
It's kind of crazy too, because it's not, at least for me, it wasn't like this gradual thing, like, okay, like, think of it like training, right? If I can, I don't know, squat 250, and then 3 weeks later I trained to get to that point where I could squat maybe 275 or whatever it is. It wasn't like that for me I just woke up literally one day and I was like, this is, like, what the heck am I doing? Like, it might have been a span of a couple of days to where I just decided, like, all right, it's time for me to leap and do something different, and kind of, I don't know, take control of your life. Because, in that entrepreneur world, it's not you can control it to a point, but a lot of it, it's a roller coaster. But do something that I felt was meaningful in my life. And it sounds like, you went through the same, very similar process. But how was it when you told your dad? Like, how did he receive that from you? Was that difficult? I mean, you said it was a difficult conversation, but what was that like?
It was tough. I was definitely choking up, because it was, I had put a lot in, he had put a lot in on me, with, he paid for a lot of education. I mean, he sent me places to go learn different things for the different systems and stuff that we were using. And it wasn't that it all went down the drain by any means. I helped him kind of get that part of his business up and going. I definitely set the foundation for it. So it was tough. Like I said, I was choking up a little bit. He was pissed for that first 24 hours. I mean, we didn't talk for a couple of days, and then a day or two went by, and he couldn't be more excited for me. So it was definitely the initial shock. He was not thrilled, and then after that he was like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I'm so proud of you. Like, this is great. Like, let's go. Like, how do we get you out of here? How do we get you into the new spot? What can I do to help? That kind of thing. So he was very, very supportive, and he still is today. And like I said, I hit him up all the time when I need stuff, or when I just need to jam on different things about the entrepreneurial side. He's had multiple businesses, and his business now is rocking. So he's definitely turned into much more than, a dad. He's an awesome, obviously an amazing dad, amazing person, but just an awesome resource to be able to hit up on a regular basis and throw ideas at, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it probably just took him a little bit to realize, like, all right, I can see myself and my son at this point, seeing that he wants to go on and take something that he's really passionate about.
Totally. The role I was in was very centralized. There wasn't anybody else in the office that was doing what I was doing or understood the system that I was using. So it was a really long phase out. And then, yeah, just like you said, I think that was probably more the reason why he was freaking out at the start. And then, as it calmed down, he was super pumped to be like, yeah, like he wants to see me grow. He wants to see everything happen. So,
yeah, I feel like that's, at least most dads, like when I'm sure, I mean, Jeff has a son, like that's what I think most dads want, is to see their son go off and honestly have the guts to do something on their own like that.
Right. And then honestly, it took a little bit. That, like I said, that conversation walking into his office was, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And it was that was not, those are like the hardest words I think I've had to speak to date. So, because he's super passionate about that part of his life. And for me to be like, yeah, I don't want to be in that, like, I'm sure it hurt. He was pretty upset, but, we have a much better relationship now for it too. So it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations or those fearful situations, it always seems like when you get through it, you come out and you're a different person afterward. You feel like you can handle a lot more. Like, I'm sure now you probably had many difficult conversations, whether with employees or customers or just in life in general. And I bet you resort back to that conversation, think, all right, we'll get through it and it'll be all right afterward.
Yeah. This isn't like having to quit from your dad's company for sure. So it's definitely, definitely easier.
So was Brute Force right after you had left that company? Was that the first venture that you went on, or was there something before it that you started?
No, it was something after. So I've been, I guess you could say, with Brute Force for about, for about, I guess 2 years. It started very small with Brute Force. They really didn't bring me on until, they were really trying to push the training side and not just manufacturing of the bags. It was more their idea to, I mean, I can't obviously take really a whole lot of credit on their behalf, but they created all of this. They were looking for a trainer to come in and help them build out the training platform. They saw that there was a need for, the military and the fire and like all those places that aren't gyms that need a little bit of guidance as far as workouts and stuff are concerned. And so I had helped them with just a couple random things. When they did some rebranding, we got connected, and me and the two guys that were running it at the time just jived really well. And so they brought me on to do a lot of stuff. So I had been coaching full time at my gym in Denver for I think like 2 or 3 years before we got hooked up and we really started kind of jamming and getting stuff going. And then, yeah, this will be the first I think we're coming up on like a year and a half since I've been really in thick with them and giving them content and helping them build out a lot of that training stuff that they did, that they put out there.
So you sort of gave them their niche, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, they're very smart in that they see the benefit in having somebody who specializes in not necessarily unstable load training, but having like a coach, right? So you wouldn't expect, your dad who runs a mortgage business to, try and chime in on like all your fitness stuff, right? These guys, they love the bag. They love the community that they're in with the military and the fire and all that stuff. So they just wanted something next level to push the benefits of the bag. If you get a trainer who kind of is focused on getting the bag and using the bag for however many ways we can figure out how to throw that thing around, that's what they were looking for. And so I kind of came in and we kind of created a handful of custom movements. They created most of them, but I kind of, put the trainer spin on them, figuring out how to not only make it effective, but make it really safe too. Because that does play a major role when you're shipping sandbags across the country to somebody who maybe has been kind of sedentary and hasn't been moving a whole lot, and they get their first bag. It's okay. How do I use this thing? And I know that's a big thing that we're working on right now, is that kind of like introduction to unstable load training, introduction to using the Brute Force sandbag, and having that as a legitimate training tool.
So what is your, like, on an everyday basis, like what is it that you're doing? Like, are you reaching out to gyms and like teaching people how to use it? Or are you developing content to teach people how to do it? What's your role?
So my role is I would say, call myself the head coach or head trainer for Brute Force training. We have started to reach out to gyms and we're trying to get kind of like almost like a seminar deal set up to where we go teach trainers how to use the bag properly. And then everything on the app is all me. So everything that all the workouts, the challenges, and then all that stuff is all me. They run all like the social media and like the business side of things, but we're still kind of in the developmental phase of Brute Force training as it is like a thing that's out there. They put the app out because there was a huge demand and there was a huge drive. People were like, I want more. What do I got to do to get some workouts? And they're like, okay, how do we get this to the people? And then that's when they called me, because we had been working together for a little while, and they're like, hey, what do you think? Can we create something that's quality? Can we create something that we can put out to these people that, obviously serves as a great branding and marketing tool, but at the same time, like they said, or kind of like I was saying before, they wanted somebody to, put some time and put some effort into creating legitimate workouts, creating safe, effective movements for stuff, because they do care about that stuff. They're not so much worried about, let the business be the business and let the training be the training. So they don't want the trainer running the business, and they don't want the businessman running the training side of things. And so that's why we kind of mesh together pretty well.
Yeah. All your strengths kind of tie in together.
Exactly. Right.
So looking back, like, even over, the course of your life, like, I'm sure you didn't see yourself doing what you're doing right now. Is that correct? I feel like that's a pretty, not random, but like it is, like if you were 10 years old, look, whatever, however old you are now, you probably weren't like, oh, I'm going to be, programming for people to use sandbags.
Right. No, 100%. It's kind of that part I was speaking about earlier, where you got to let things evolve at the same time as you're pushing stuff down the road. Brute Force obviously approached me with a super opportunity, and I wanted to, I was into it, and I still am. I think it's awesome. The sandbag, it just whoops you. I don't know how much training with it you guys have used, but gyms are starting to throw them into CrossFit competitions. Obviously when I can't get to the gym, I'm using it out on my patio or out at the beach. And it's, like I said, it's an awesome tool. And so, yeah, looking back when I was, when I was younger, I knew I would be doing something active. I knew I'd do something where I'm not sitting in a cubicle all day. Letting things evolve, letting opportunities present themselves and capitalizing on those when they do present themselves, if it's the right thing, the right time. I did absolutely that. And now it's awesome to be in everybody's pocket, right there whenever people start to do it. And then when I'm watching people post stuff on Instagram, it's cool to see, somebody across the country, throwing the sandbag around, doing the workout that I programmed last week. So it's very gratifying in that as well.
And I think it serves another role too. I know you mentioned the fire and EMS and police.
Mm-hmm.
Like for those units that may not have access to gyms, essentially they can sort of lean on the sandbag where you can do like the full body type of workout and sort of get that workout in, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's when I program there, like I said, we're building out some other fun things for like the people who are into it. But yeah, for the people who don't have a gym and they just have a bag, it's, that's kind of how I program. It's programmed to fit pretty much any ability level. I don't put any weights on there, obviously, because we don't want to like, hey, if you can't lift that weight, obviously you shouldn't be lifting that weight. But yeah, no, we put that out there so everybody has that. Realistically, you have a trainer in your pocket, and if you have the bag, like you can get, and you don't even have to use the bag half the time. Some of the movements are conducive enough. You're just throwing the bag on just to add a little bit of resistance, whether it's to squats and push-ups and then a little jog. Half the time you could get most of the work done without even using a bag.
So kind of diving back into, as you can tell, I'm kind of a philosophical. I like to think.
No, let's go.
So you talked about your corporate career and how that was, what would you say, was it 5-ish years?
It was 5 or 6 years. Yeah. I'd have to go back and look exactly. But if you count when I was at my first job out of college, it was probably like 6 or 7.
Okay. So
corporate for a while for sure.
You were doing what we're taught in school. You got the job,
Mm-hmm.
what we're taught. What would you say your life fulfillment is in comparing it to when you were, having the steady paycheck, working whatever hours, compared to, going after something that really embodies just what you've been about since, the time you described when you were a kid?
Sure. I've never loved the clock in, clock out mentality. It's funny. My girlfriend now is in a sales role, and I always kind of laugh when she's like, "Hey, do you have time to do this?" And it's like, well, I kind of have time to do whatever. It's like I can create time. Like I like that part of it, but my work's never done, and that's probably the route I would push down. That it's like there's never a time. There's a time when I disconnect 100%. I mean, you go crazy if you don't. But having that disconnect and then always having something to do, there's that kind of part of you that like freaks out because there is so much to do all the time. But then there's kind of that thing is like, well, you just got to keep going. You got to continue to build. Everything's evolving. Everything's changing. You got to find that next thing. And so I guess that would be like my security blanket is there's always going to be something, obviously crazy things will come up. And you just have to react. You can't sit there and dwell on it. You can't have a bad attitude about it. You gotta keep going. You can't sit still, you gotta 100% be all in, disconnect when you can. And then, you'll always be able to find it. So does that kind of answer is that what you're looking for there?
Oh yeah. No, I wanted to exactly what you described really is kind of the difference between, the clock in, clock out versus, cause there is a romantic idea of entrepreneurship and being able to do that kind of thing too, but it's also good to hear like it's overwhelming. Like there's always something to do. Mm-hmm. And I forgot what I was going to ask you. Do you have something else to ask him? I had a question for him. Do you have something?
Just a point about that sort of disconnecting. I think that plays a key role, especially when you're in this sort of entrepreneur mindset, being able to tone everything down and just step back for a second, almost recharge. I think that plays a huge role in basically long-standing success.
Totally. It's I hold that part of my life I take that part pretty serious. The gym is a little bit of an escape for me. I'm a sucker for sunsets, so I like to go post up on the beach with my dogs and hang out there, even if it's for that 15-20 minutes of just hanging out again, walking the dogs with my girlfriend or whatever. That part's important because overwhelming it's exactly that. I had one like nervous breakdown in my life and I called a couple people and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. Like my heart was racing. I had to just like lay down and try and fall asleep because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know. I've never felt that before. And it was just, okay, yeah, there is so much to do and there is so much going on, but having a system to tackle all that and to manage that is what, kind of what you touched on is finding that sustained success and managing that time away. If it is just the 15-20 minute walk down the street.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say now. Came back. Must have been an important thought. What would you tell, that person sitting there that maybe I always talk about like entrepreneur and because that's just, what I'm into and the people that surround myself with like you and
sure.
What we're into. But, I used to have more of a, I guess probably narrow-minded mentality toward it, especially when I first like got really excited about the fact that, I started to actually believe like I can do that. Like I can actually start my own little training business, coaching business, podcast, like whatever it is, like I can do this. So that excitement. But then, like he described, there is that after that excitement, you come back down and then have those breakdowns and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But what would you tell that person who's maybe has an itch to do something, but fear is a huge component of not quitting that, 9-to-5 job if you want to, or not quitting whatever it is that you're doing or changing your life. Like, what would you tell that person who's sitting there like, I think I really want to do this, but I'm just scared to?
Right. Telling them to just send it is obviously, it would kind of be like the first thing that I tell them. It's like, you just got to go. If you're into it, one thing I always remember, that my dad said when I was working with him is if you love what you do, you'll never go to work, again, a day in your life. And it doesn't feel like work. And if, as long as it doesn't feel like work, if you're not, in that like clock in, clock out mentality, I think you're going to be just fine. So as long as you're into it, as long as you can, you have a vision and you're like, oh, I want to do this and then this and then this, and I want to go here and do this thing. I think you have the path. It's just, you got to take that first step. For me, it was, walking into my dad's office. That first step was obviously realizing it, but then walking into my dad's office and saying, hey, I'm going to try this. I've been lucky enough to have super supportive parents. And if I did fail, I know I have a big support system behind me. So that wasn't necessarily why I did it. But at the same time, you should think through those things. It's, is it realistic at the same time? But the people who are crazy enough to take that big chance are the ones who usually have the biggest success. So, go a little crazy. Really, what's the worst that, that could happen? You gotta go drive for Uber for a couple of weeks or something like that. Like you'll figure it out. If you're into it, you'll figure out how to do it.
Like, I'll go bounce at a bar. I don't care. I'll do check IDs, whatever I got to do to make sure that I can do what it is you want to do, even if you have to do things you don't want to do.
Right.
Able to do the thing you want to do. That's all. It seems like that point in your life that really impacted you when you went and had that conversation with your dad. It's like, that was a huge, bold statement to the world. Like, I'm committing to.
Right. I got to find this next thing.
Yeah.
Got to find this next thing. No, totally. It was, it was very bold. I mean, like I said, I was, the day it happened, I did not go into work thinking that that's what was going to go on. My dad and I actually kind of got into it over an email. It was so silly. And I just walked in and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Like, I can't do this anymore. So it was, I went in just like any other day, clocked in, and then I walked out of there just like eyes were bugging out of my head. Like, oh my God, like this is happening. So no time's ever a good time either. To kind of go back on what we were talking about. It's like, there's never going to be a right time to do it. So it's just gotta go.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when I out of college, out of grad school, like I initially was going to be a college strength and conditioning coach. And I just decided, like, after a couple of years in that feeling like this doesn't light my fire the way I want it to. And then, but I didn't know what to do. I took a job as a PE teacher, and then that only lasted a month, because the same kind of, I was like, that was at that point in time where I started to kind of catch that bug that we've been talking about throughout this episode. And I know that feeling, exactly what you're talking about. Like, when you're walking out of that building, like, what, like, did I just, like,
what did I just do?
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do next, but I know it's not that. So
right, yeah, exactly. If it's off your list, you're good.
Yeah.
And that's something you should absolutely hold on to, and I would push you to preach that more. Is knowing what you're not going to do is just as important as knowing what you want to do. Saying no to people is often pretty difficult, and cutting ties or cutting relationships with people, and we're having to deal with that stuff is hard. But like I said, once it's off your list, that weight that gets lifted off your shoulders is awesome. So,
and it gives you this confidence. Like, I just took a dive into the darkest depths of the unknown that I've ever done in my life.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Swim out of that, you can swim out of anything, really.
Right. No, that's a good way to think about it. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing crazy things that you would never think would happen. It's just, you got to just find your way. So
I think that's a great place to wrap up for today. I think that the end of that conversation, that's actually exactly where we want it to lead, somewhere where Perfect. You can kind of share some stories with us and share just some lessons. That's what we want people to get out of this episode today. When you guys are listening at home, is just these little tidbits. It's, we're not sitting here trying to just talk about sandbag workouts. It's the things that you learn along the process of one working out, but just the stories that people have to share, just like Donny G shared with us today.
Awesome.
So before we head out, give us some information. People want to buy the sandbags. People want to follow you, follow Brute Force. Like, where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, so everything is under Brute Force Training. So bruteforcetraining.com. Brute Force Training is on Instagram. If you want to find me, I'm actually working on my site now, but you can find me at Coach Donny, coach.donny on Instagram. And then, Coach Donny at CoachDonny.com. If you have questions, or just hit me up via Instagram. Instagram is probably the best route to take for now. But yeah, go snag a bag, go download the app. It's a lot of fun. You can there's a cool scoreboard on there. You can always see where people across the country are ranking up. So it's fun.
All right. Donny, thanks for coming on the show. Jeff, thanks for co-hosting with me today again. All right. And that's it for today. We'll see you next week on More Than Strength.